why you don't want to get high on romance this Valentine's Day. Hi, sensitives. I'm helping you with your relationships this Valentine's Day. And today I'm talking specifically about the honeymoon period in a relationship, or AKA Valentine's Day, which is supposed to recreate the honeymoon phase of the relationship. And how do you deal with that? Because if you're not careful as a sensitive person, when we're trying to recreate our relationships or look for a new partner, we're sometimes trying to recreate the high, and we're not really looking for the long-term solutions of what would be good for us in terms of a partner. We're really just trying to get that initial affection, or we're looking for the partner that's super attractive to make us feel better about ourselves and reinforce our self-esteem, rather than looking at the long-term values of what a partner can actually provide. We don't want to get caught up in this thrill of a short-term attraction only to find out that the person isn't right for us long-term, because that can feel like, ouch, you're high for a while and then you wake up and you're like, ugh, I landed on the concrete, and it's not so fun. And a lot of people, that's the way they recreate their relationships over and over again in their life, is they keep looking for the high, and then they choose to marry based on that high. And you can kind of tell in those wedding photos when people are spending really exorbitant amounts on their wedding and they're plastering it all over the internet. I'm not saying that they're always on a high and that they're not really looking at reality, but generally plastering your romance all over the internet via wedding photos or whatever you do to put it all over the internet is probably not a wise idea, and it's the act of a crazy person who's high on romance. And what you want to do instead when you're actually choosing a life partner is become very level-headed. You need to sober up from the drunken effects of being in love. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're not happy. You can be happy, but be long-term happy. Don't be looking for the high or the next wedding photo. You're probably going to end up becoming that person who gets married 3 times, in the span of 10 years and plasters it all over Facebook only to find out that they're going to get a divorce yet again. Even if you think your happy attitude is coming from a good place, it can come off as annoying to your partner, especially if you're the sensitive person and they're the logical person. They're not going to be super happy that you're broadcasting even a lot of good news about them to all your friends and family. You don't want to broadcast anything bad either, but just keep things neutral. Keep things to yourself. Be sober, be level-headed, and your relationship will last that much longer if it's private. Because the more you share openly about your relationships and your personal life, the more likely it's going to come and bite your personal life in the butt. Now, you could also take the opposite approach. Say you completely ignore me and you do want to put your personal life all over the internet. The one benefit that I can see from that is that you might grow your following and you might improve your career, or you might become famous on the internet. Michael Jackson did this in his life. He broadcasted all of the information about his personal life in a way that many artists didn't, and that actually increased his fame. If you're looking to grow followers and become famous, you can post your pictures all over the internet and pretend you're fabulously in love and living an idyllic life. And it probably will improve your fame and your career, but be aware that that's what you're doing. It's not actually good for the relationship. So if you genuinely love and care for your partner, you may not want to do that to them. You see, not unless they're really aligned and they're willing to become famous alongside you in order to grow a business. Then maybe it works. But it's not really good for your personal life. Might be good for your career if you play your cards right. But again, even if your partner says they're okay with something, there's always a risk of that when you ask them to do something, that they may want to pretend like everything's okay, but they're not actually happy with the decisions you're making. You're putting your relationship at risk. So you always have to keep that in mind whenever you ask any favor from your partner, but especially if you want to post public information about your private relationship. Even if you think you know this life lesson flat, we're all vulnerable to forgetting it from time to time, because we all fall in love with different things in our life from time to time. I had an experience around Christmas time last year where I fell insanely in love with this kitten. He was so adorable and I wanted to adopt him so badly. However, my life is in transition right now, And it's not really wise for me to adopt a pet, because what if I move and what if I change my lifestyle and the pet doesn't really fit into it and I've taken on that commitment? I realized that, and I realized I have to wait for my transitions to play out and make sure I know what my future life is going to look like before I go ahead and adopt any new pets. But for a few days, I was in love with this kitten. I lost my friggin' mind over this kitten. So I've had a recent experience where I've fallen in love really, really hard. And I really wanted to go completely against everything that I had planned. I wanted to rebel against myself, basically, and just adopt the kitten anyway for the hell of it, because I had so much time looking after this kitten in the shelter and playing with him. And oh my God, he was so cute. He was so cute. And we all can lose our minds over a potential partner. We can lose our mind even through a shiny new venture that we're looking to take on in our business or in our job. We think the shiny new thing looks incredible, looks amazing, and I'm in love. But having said that, you have to keep a sober mindset. You want to focus your time and attention on priorities that are truly meaningful and truly important to you. Don't take on stuff that you're not ready to take on. And in the case of the kitten that I wanted to adopt so badly, it turns out there were tons of people willing to adopt this kitten because he was so stinking adorable. He had no problem finding a family. So it was not necessary for me to step in and adopt him personally. He was okay. And in the future, when I am ready to adopt, maybe I'll pick an animal that's really vulnerable and really needs a home very badly, and then I'll be able to provide that opportunity to that animal. But in the meantime, before I take on that commitment, I need to make sure my priorities are straight and I have everything aligned so I can take care of the animal appropriately for the rest of its life and not just rush into it because I fell in love. And it's the same with relationships. You don't want to rush into commitments because you're in love. You want to make sure you're making the right decisions for the right reasons. And sometimes if you lose your mind, you may need to go to your friends and family and try to get some perspective.